excited to have Alexis Moed on here to take us through building a girls' youth hockey program. She's done a great job out in Long Island, had a conversation prior to this, and I'm just really interested in how she was able to build what she's doing. So, Alexis, how are you doing today? Ready to talk some girls' hockey?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. But before we get into kind of what you're doing now, I want to get a little bit of your background. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get passionate about the game of hockey? And just take us through a little bit of your youth hockey journey.
Well, I grew up on Long Island, and, I don't think there was really one definitive moment where I said that I wanted to play hockey. I think it was something that, progressed over time. And certainly having been born during the Islander Stanley Cup dynasty years, there was a lot of enthusiasm and interest for, developing programs on the island here. And, I'm sure all of that played into the exposure that I had to the game. And, I came to it pretty late. I was about 12 when I started to play. Once I got into it, at first I thought it was just another sport that I was going to do. I was very athletic, so I was always playing something. And it just morphed over the years, pretty quickly into being my primary sport.
Very cool. Very cool. That's those Islanders teams had to have been pretty fun to watch, huh? Good stuff. So I wanted to ask you, what were some of the skills that you feel like you learned in playing youth hockey that have helped you in your later years? And now that hockey is, at least your playing days are past you.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing, and it's talked about more now than it was when I first started, but it's the importance of skating. And fortunately, when I got into things, because I was so far behind and also the few private coaches I had, there was a big focus on developing my skating skills. And if I hadn't had that foundation, I don't think I would have been able to play college hockey, because I certainly didn't have the years of game experience that my college teammates had, but at least I had a really strong skill set, and that all started with the foundation of skating. So, even now when we coach, in our Islander program, we focus heavily on those foundation skills, specifically with skating.
Nice. Now, do you guys have like a specific day attributed to skating, or is it something that you just encourage your coaches to do maybe at points during practice? Is there like a rhyme or reason to how you teach the skating?
Well, what we do is our structure is that we have one day that's devoted strictly to skill development, and then we have one day that's team development. So we follow the USA Hockey ADM model on that skills day, where we have two teams on the ice, split up into small groups, no more than 8 players per group, and each station that they go to is devoted to a specific skill. So they'll have their skating station, they'll have their stick handling, their shooting, and we also bring in additional specific coaches. We always have a goalie coach on hand, and we also have had power skating coaches in the past. So we can tweak the focus of that skills practice any which way we want, depending on where we think the players are at and where our evaluations are telling us to go with the teams.
I love that. I mean, I'm taking over a program here, and we're doing the same thing. We're devoting a night to skills, and I think it's so good. Like, I don't want to be on the ice with my players that night. Like, I want them to learn from other people, because there's things that other coaches can teach them that I can't teach them, better suited to their skill set of what they do. So I love the fact that you guys are doing that. Have you found that that's been a real plus to what you guys are doing?
Well, I think it's certainly fast-tracked the players' development as individuals. And then obviously when that all comes together, the teams have improved greatly because they're coming, to the game with such a good, strong skills foundation. And it also builds a lot of continuity between all the different levels within the organization. So by having multiple teams on the ice split up into these small groups, it's not just the 16U coach working with the players. It's the 14U coach, the 19U coach. So now the coaches at each level are seeing what the players need to move to the next step and what's coming through the pipeline. And so each team is now just inherently connected through the exposure that the players have to these coaches every single week.
That's awesome. I love that. That's so great. And, you're doing a great job shepherding these girls through their youth hockey journey, their youth hockey experience. And there's so much, obviously, that goes into it that we'll dive into. But one of the things I wanted to ask you in playing college hockey is, just your journey and process to get recruited to go to Boston College. And I wanted to ask you what your process was like, and then what you're seeing in today's day and age, and how that's changed for the girls coming up through today. I got to imagine it's changed a little bit. And we and a lot of other people are trying to push for professional hockey, or to be where women aspire to play. It's not quite there yet. Now it's college hockey and the national team. So what was your process like to get to that highest level of where girls aspire to go, and how have you seen that change?
Well, I think my process was probably a little different than everyone else's because I started so late. So while everyone else was focused on team development and maybe bouncing from one organization to the other to get that exposure, I was still working on my skills, just so I could hang at the top level. And, I certainly don't discount the fact that I got lucky in some situations. I ended up, being able to talk with the right people and getting direction and ending up on the right team to get exposure. And, we always say to the players now, you can't discount the fact that there is a certain amount of responsibility and ownership that comes over your own path to getting to college hockey. You have to do the work yourself, and you have to be able to market yourself. And so, even when I was going through this, I was still reaching out to coaches, doing the research on the schools and finding the best fit, not just the hockey program, but understanding the fact that this was 4 years where I was going to live somewhere that I need to be comfortable. The academics had to be there, and also the post-college networking and career support had to be a big part of whatever school I was going to choose, because 4 years will go by pretty quickly, and then you want to make sure that you've used hockey as a tool to put yourself in the best position moving forward professionally. And so now I see, it's become a bit of a science. There's a lot of recruiting help, and there's a lot of different theories and paths on what to take. But I think it all still comes down to doing the work yourself, and getting yourself in front of coaches and communicating that you're interested in their program, and really just doing your homework as far as where you think the best fit is. But I think as far as exposure, I think that we've had things in place in the program that have certainly helped get the kids out in front of these college coaches. And again, it all comes back to it's a two-way street. It's not just putting yourself out there and thinking that you're going to get noticed in a game. You have to communicate with the programs.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting kind of balance between exposure and development, right? Like I always tell kids, I was a college hockey coach, and I spent thousands of days on the road recruiting and watching players and building relationships. And the one constant of every kid that I ever recruited was they were really good at hockey. Like that was that had to happen. They had to be really good at hockey. And I feel like we focus so much on the exposure side of it, which I don't want to say that that's not important, and being your best advocate and reaching out and doing certain things like reaching out to schools can certainly help you. But at the end of the day, like the development side of it and actually becoming a good hockey player, that gets lost. And is that something that you guys, it sounds like you're really trying to promote?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of focus on the number of games that are played in the season, because there's that misconception that it necessarily translates into getting more exposure. And it comes down to in a lot of cases quality versus quantity. Are you going to the right showcases? Are you going to the right tournaments? Are you doing what you need to do in the off season, whether it be a district tryout or a national level camp? Because that's really when the majority of the recruiting is going to happen. It's not those individual games or one-off trip to New Jersey or up to Boston for a weekend. It's the major events that are important for the kids to get to. And also understanding, like you said, you still have to be a good hockey player. You can be in whatever system, and you can learn whatever system your organization or your coach wants. But when you go on to that next program, they're going to have their own system. They're going to have their own style of play. And if you don't have the skills and the ability to execute whatever it is they're asking, then it doesn't matter that you may know 5-6 ways to break out of a zone. If it comes down to the basics where you can't move the puck and you can't skate and keep pace with the game, systems really at that point are not going to help you be successful. You still have to just fundamentally be a good skater, be a good hockey player.
Yeah, exactly. That's something we talk about all the time. Like, if you can't execute a skill, you can't execute a system.
Right.
The skill part of it and the hockey playing part of it has to come first. And especially like when you coach at the older levels, like, like you can teach a system. Like, that's
Yeah.
something that kids can pick up pretty easily, but you can't teach. You can pick up a system much quicker than you can teach the habits of executing a skill. And so if you can lay the foundation at the younger ages for that skill work and that hockey sense work, it just you're much better able to teach the structure side of it for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that's what coaches are looking for. I mean, I think that's how, for as little game experience I had, because I started so late, I think that ultimately when it comes down to recruiting, coaches are looking to see if they're bringing a player in that has potential to develop and has that foundation. Because, as you know, when you get into college hockey, there's very little time to be working on your edges or your shot or your puck movement. They're looking to just teach at that point, and you're expected to have the skills to be able to learn and execute whatever it is you're being taught. There's really, once you get to that level, I think there's very little time for skill development. So you have to kind of come in as a freshman with at least a strong foundation. And obviously you're gonna grow physically, you're gonna get stronger in their system, but you have to show that you have that foundation and the potential to thrive. Otherwise, long term, you're not a good investment for that program.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's talk about your college hockey experience, because you got to play hockey at a storied program at Boston College. What was your experience like there playing at the Heights or the Hills? Is
Well,
it the Heights or the Hills? The
the
Heights,
height.
right?
It's the
Yeah.
I mean, going to BC and playing at BC, was everything that someone would think being in that, in that environment was like. It was just, it was a 10 out of a 10 experience, from the hockey program and being part of the program that was in its building years back then, to the academics, to feeling comfortable socially on campus, and just everything about BC. There was never really a bad day at BC. It's just an incredible place to be. And, I think it takes time to realize and appreciate the experience. And though I knew when I was in the moment how great it was, and I certainly appreciated every day at BC, when you're a couple of years out, you realize certain things that you have because of that experience there. And it really solidifies how amazing of a school and a program that they have, and it can be something professionally, it can be something socially, looking back and thinking, my three best friends in college are still my three best friends. And you look and you say, well, I have that because, of my time at BC. And then, obviously doing this now for a living, building off of the experience that I had in their hockey program and the strong academic foundation I had, it does come up, almost daily professionally. And you certainly feel that you're better off because you've been given such great building blocks, and you had that because you were a Boston College athlete.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something we forget sometimes, is like college hockey is not just college hockey, it's entire college experience. And I was the same way. Two of my teammates were in my wedding, and I still have friends that I talk to, both hockey wise and people that I met outside of hockey when I played in college. And yeah, the whole experience is amazing. And I'm glad that you got to have that there. How did the team do when you were there? Did you guys win any championships? How was
No, like I said, we were kind of part of that building generation,
yeah.
which, I think, again, all these years out now, seeing how great the program is, seeing the phenomenal work that Katie King has done and how the program has progressed. And, the program is very good about reminding the alumni that we were all part of the process. And though we may not have won championships when we were there, we kept that program going, and we continued to go in and work hard every day and forge the future of the program. And now we're realizing, and we're able to see the results of our efforts and our dedication as being part of that building generation.
Very cool. Very cool that they still kind of reach out and appreciate, everybody that's kind of come through. When you can feel like you're a part of the program still, even years later. I mean, that's so big. And even for the girls that are there today to have that connection with the alumni and stuff, it's got to be huge for their success that they're having now. So that's cool. So you obviously played hockey at Boston College, and now you're back in youth hockey, and you're coaching youth hockey and building a program. What got you interested in that? What got you interested in wanting to give back to the game?
Well, I think, it wasn't necessarily a case of getting back into the game. I think it's just, I never left. One of the things that are difficult when your formal playing career ends, whether it be due to an injury or graduation, there's a period where you feel that you've lost a little bit, or you may be losing your identity. It's something that you've done for so long. It's become so ingrained that hockey has become your life. And now you're faced with an ending to what you always knew. And so there's that moment where you question, who you are as a hockey player, if you're still even considered to be a hockey player. And you feel like one, and you always think that you're going to be, or at least self-identify as a hockey player first and foremost. And now that playing career is over. And so, I was fortunate enough that I had, some of my private coaches that I had grew up playing with and stayed with throughout college say, there's always hockey. You're always going to be able to find a place in the sport. And so for me, it really came down to coaching was just that natural progression. It was just that next stage that I was going to go into. And so when I first came home, I started off coaching boys hockey, and, I was fine with that. There wasn't really a lot on the island for girls hockey. And, when I started to look at it, I realized that in the time that I left Long Island in high school to play in Connecticut, the reasons why I had left, there were still players that were leaving, female players that were leaving the island to go play elsewhere. And the reasons for leaving had not changed in the 10 years or so that I had left. And there was actually less girls playing on the island when I graduated from college than prior to me going off to school 4 or 5 years beforehand. And so, that in itself told me, when you look at the numbers throughout the country, and the sport was growing exponentially at that time, and then to see coming back home that for whatever reason, we were seeing a decline in the number of female hockey players, that right there told me that inherently something was wrong. And it really getting involved in the girls' game at that point, that became a case of necessity. I felt that obviously something was not right, and somebody needed to come along and correct it, because it just did not make sense that the rest of the country was growing the sport, and that wasn't what was happening down here.
Yeah, interesting. So, you've put a lot of time and effort into building what you're building right now, and I wanted to ask you, because it's something that we're trying to do here in our area, is try and solidify, girls so they don't have to leave. A lot of them feel like they have to leave at a younger and younger age, seemingly every year from what I'm seeing. So what are maybe 2 or 3 goals that you had when you started this, and seeing it now a couple years later, however many years later, how would you assess some of those goals that you had now?
Well, I think when I first started the program, I understood that one of the challenges that faces a lot of girls programs, particularly when you're not in a hockey-centric area, is that sustainability. Is the longevity there for that organization to survive, or is it going to be that one-off 12U team, and then it's going to be a one-off 19U team? So really building that structure, that sustainable model was my primary goal. I didn't want a player to come into the organization at 12 and then feel that she had to leave by 16 because there was no future. So the goal was really to build a complete 10U through 19U program. That was the primary goal. And then, as far as a couple other things that I really wanted to accomplish was just continuing to be innovative, take the program in a direction that I had not seen girls hockey programs go in, particularly in the area, and really stay, I guess you could say, current with the development of the sport throughout the country, because a lot of times, particularly here on the island, we think we're in a little bit of a bubble, and we're being recruited against the player that's next to us on the bench. And then you get out and you realize that there's a whole country and even a country to the north that we're going up against. And if we're not staying current and if we're not developing the players with a more national thought in mind, then we're really just still going to stay a local program. And in the long run, when this is a national pool that you're up against, you can't stay local physically and you can't stay local in your mindset either.
Interesting. So judging through that, like, what do you think have been some of the greatest barriers to you attaining those goals? Talking about a bubble can certainly be a barrier. And I think everywhere in the country kind of lives in a bubble for sure. But what do you think some of those barriers are to attaining the goals of where you want your program to be at the end of the day?
Well, I think, I wouldn't quantify them as barriers. I would say that understanding that there's going to be challenges, and there's going to be challenges every season, and it's just a matter of finding that workaround. I think too often organizations will be started and they'll think that once they get off the ground that first year and get going, then that's it, and it's going to be smooth sailing. And every single season there's something that comes up. And so it does keep you a bit on your toes as far as planning and logistics every single season. But the fact that there is a challenge every season is the biggest challenge. It's not a push button operation by any means. Once we have, and we do have now, a very strong structure, it does become easier. But it's not an opportunity for us to sit back and coast and just let the program run. We have to constantly be coming up with new ideas and workarounds and having a lot of contingency plans in place, particularly in a year like what we're facing right now. And so constant obstacles overall is the biggest obstacle to growth.
Yeah, amen to that for sure. And do you feel like a big part of that is there's a lot of different hands and a lot of different cookie jars and a lot of different people with their own kind of self-interests? Like you say, like, it seems like a different challenge every year. And I feel like what I've seen in the youth hockey game, both boys and girls, is that a lot of it is driven by a certain parent or a certain person who has a kid at that level, and they're just going to try and do everything that they can to make their team better. Sometimes with good intentions, sometimes I would argue maybe not with the best intentions in mind. So, like, do you feel like that's one of the challenges? Because it is like, you say you want to build a program that's sustainable from 10 to 19, sometimes there's different actors at each of those ages that want different things. So has that been a challenge that you've seen?
Well, I recognize that was the biggest challenge, and just to be completely candid about it, I think it was the biggest pitfall to certain organizations. And so I eliminated that completely. We don't believe in parent coaching. We don't believe in parent involvement at the administrative level. It's not that we don't appreciate parent coaching. We certainly understand how hard it is to be a coach. But our model is that each team is equal to the team below it and above it. And we don't have any parent coaches, and no one is related to anybody in the organization. And that actually has made at least that challenge not a factor on our plate. And recognizing that everyone has to be, or at least each team has to be treated equally and with just as much importance. The 10U is no more important than the 19U, and the 14U is no more important than the 12U. It's a linear process, and I think that's allowed for the growth that we've had and had it so quickly, is that we don't have one team ever going off in a self-serving direction. It's all one organization, and each program or each age level feeds off of the one below it and the one above it.
I love that. It's what we're trying to do here too. And it's been a challenge to say the least, but so as you kind of evaluate from when you kind of started to where you are now, if you can maybe give us one or two of the best moments and maybe one or two of the the failures that you've had to learn from and
Mhm.
get better at through that, what would you say would be maybe a couple of those kind of seminal pieces to where the journey's at now?
Yeah, I think I think in terms of success, it's never the moments that you think it will be. It's never some big win or big tournament. And though those moments do stick out and they're very important to the overall growth of the program, it's the little things that come up that you don't expect. Those moments that surprise you, where you realize that what we've been able to build has really been something special and been remarkably successful. And I have a coach that he's going to be my 16U coach with me this season, and he's got a lot of coaching experience. And he said you're going to have these little moments where it does hit you, and it always does surprise me when they come up. Maybe it's at a tryout, and having the ice just completely filled with players, and never having really seen that on Long Island before, where you have such an enormous turnout at one age group at a tryout, or even last night getting on the ice with the kids for a clinic. You wouldn't expect a big turnout the week before a holiday weekend, and then the clinic caps out. I'm just about to get on the ice, and there's just this sea of girls out there, and that's kind of when you realize that we've really done I think a pretty remarkable thing with the program in a very short period of time. And as far as failures, I don't like to look at them as that. And I think it's hard to say that there's been anything that would qualify as a failure when you've had 5 years of growth and 5 years of success. And I think I'm generally pretty confident, and I look at season to season, and even in some cases month to month, and there's certainly things that we can improve upon and things that we can do better, and that's how the program evolves, is because we're always going back and reevaluating. But I wouldn't describe them as failures. I just think that they're opportunities for growth and opportunities for us to improve and learn the next direction for the program, where we need to take things.
For sure. I love that. Love that mindset. One of the things that I've found to be really important and tough to get is buy-in. Sometimes when you're swimming against the current with what you believe, and I think we're very similar in a lot of the ways that we think about the youth hockey experience, sometimes that's against what's going on in youth hockey right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you been able to create the buy-in so people, number one, understand what it is that you are doing, number two, get excited about the things that you're doing, and number three, they're kind of all into the way of thinking that you have about what the youth hockey experience should look like?
Yeah, I think it's a couple different factors. Our first year, when I wrote the mission statement for the program, now almost 6 years ago now, it's been since I wrote it. I understood that was our framework, and it was something that always had to serve as a solid base for the program, but at the same time, it had to allow for growth. So it had to be flexible. It had to allow, to build, and it was something that we could always go back to make sure that we were following, our philosophy, and we certainly have done a lot of work to build our culture, not just in terms of how the players and the coaches relate, but also to our methodology in developing the players as individuals and developing teams. So I think, having that and being able to present that clear path certainly helped bring people on board and sort of, indoctrinate the kids into what it was all about, being a member of the, Islander Elite program. And, we also, we're very calculated with our timing of things. We look to see when it's appropriate to introduce a new feature to the program, and certainly gauging parent and player and who's receptive. That helps get buy-in, when people are paying attention and they're ready to receive some new initiative. it helps get people on board. And athletes are result driven, and parents of athletes want to see results. And understanding that if they could look at their player year one, or even at the start of the year in comparison to the end of the year, and they see that player's gotten better, that helps with buy-in, because it illustrates that our philosophy is working, and our system is in place, and there's results. And at the end of the day, individual results is at the youth level what parents want to see. It's what players want. And when everyone is developing individually, then just naturally you're going to have successful teams year to year.
I love that. Now, do you guys track anything? Is there any data in terms of development and how you track how a player is from the beginning to the end?
We have, particularly at the older level, we have the older players evaluated by an outside consultant who also works with them in their college advising. And so for the players that have been with us for a few years now, we can see how that evaluation has changed over the years, and different parts of their game that need to be worked on. And when they had a suggestion to work on something, how the next year when they're evaluated, that's no longer part of the player report, that they've obviously improved on that part of their game. And we do a lot of game video. And now in the current situation where we can't really play games right now, we're looking at filming the players from a skills standpoint, and then changing what would usually be our game review into skills review. So we've been filming some of the practices. We've been filming the kids skate individually, and then obviously execute the drill. And we're going to be able to go back now and say, okay, here's footage of you doing a drill in September, and here you are in February doing the same drill, and we can see that your technique is better, the speed is there, puck handling, whatever it might be. We'll have some data that we can really present to the players, so they can see right then and there that they've improved in a short time.
Very cool. Very cool. We're actually doing that too with COVID. We're not sure what games are going to look like when we're going to start, what games are even going to look like, so we've been doing a lot of videoing of practice to be able to teach. And even with my team, I have an 18U team from an exposure standpoint too. If kids aren't able to play that many games, I can do some small games in practice and film it and send it off to junior teams or college teams and stuff like that. So the video side of it is, I love that you guys are doing that. We've tried to do that too.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what we discussed earlier about what is, what appeals to a college coach, and especially now when they can't watch them play a game, they need to see that they may have interest in a player that has the ability to execute whatever system it is that program has. And certainly in a time now where we don't have game footage, or we might not have as much game footage as we would have in a normal season, being able to present that type of a video to a coach, I think will help the players, get recruited in a time where there's obviously a recruiting freeze right now. Yeah, for sure. Okay, last question I have for you, and this is one I'm really interested in. So with a lot of the women's hockey players that I talk to, both at the youth level and at even the professional college level, one of the words that always comes up is mentorship. And specifically what the PWHPA is doing right now, and the higher level, like they very much want to leave a legacy, and they want to leave the game better than where they found it. And I wanted to ask you, because you're building this program where you want to streamline things from 10U all the way to 19U. Are you guys doing anything in terms of the 19Us getting on the ice with some of the younger kids? Yes. Or are you doing any, like, what type of mentorship are you guys providing for your girls? Well, we've had that in place for a couple of seasons now. Our 19Us and our 16Us will regularly help out in the 10U practices. We also, on the Islander side of things, there's a lot of learn to play programs, try hockey for free programs. So my older players are always offered the opportunity to volunteer, in those programs. And again, going back to that skills practice where we have multiple age groups on the ice at once, the players, they do get to see each other. We all practice, basically on the same night. So it's like girls hockey night in the rink for us. And, the 10Us see the 19s and so forth. And, we move kids throughout practices as well, especially when we get towards the end of the season. If we have a 14U player that's moving up to 16U the following season, we'll throw her into a couple of 16U practices just so she gets a sense of what's ahead. So, just from watching the girls interact around the rink and how the 10U would relate to the 19U, I think we think we've definitely built continuity, not just with the coaching staff, but with the players, throughout the levels. And, the greatest thing for the younger levels is to see where they could be, and if they see it, they, as everyone says, if you see it, you can be it. And
Yeah.
we also echo that with the coaching staff. I mean, I do my best to get a mostly female coaching staff. And so, the 19Us and the 16Us, they can see that, okay, here's someone that was in my position at one point. They went on this path and they played college hockey. They did what I want to do. And now they're back working with me. All right, this is someone that I can relate to and certainly has a lot of valuable direction for me, because I want to do what they're doing.
That's awesome. Now, how active have you had to been to try and get female coaches to be a part of your program? Because that's one thing that we're really trying to do, but it's been a little bit of a challenge to be able to get that for a whole host of different reasons is what I'm learning. So how have you been able to attract, and have you had to be really proactive to try and get women back?
Yeah, it's definitely one of our biggest challenges. There's obviously, I put a big push on getting female coaches, but certainly if we have a male coach who is qualified and I think can relate well to the girls, we certainly would never turn that coach away. We don't want the same thing to happen to us. If we want to coach a boys team, we wouldn't want to be disqualified from the position because of a feeling that you have to have a male coach for a male team. So we certainly don't want to, echo that within our own organization. So we do have a handful of male coaches, but there is a really strong female presence throughout the whole program. Obviously with me being the president of the organization, I think that helps, draw in female talent. And we do everything we can to find qualified female coaches. And it's tough because, the nature of these organizations is that they are not full-time jobs. And it's a big ask when we bring coaches in and they have full-time jobs and then they're coming to the rink working till 10 o'clock at night. And then, in a normal year, we'd be traveling extensively on the weekends. So, it really becomes a 7-day a week, almost 24 hours a day endeavor. And, for all the coaches that are involved in the organization, not just the women coaches, it's certainly a huge sacrifice on their part personally, but those coaches that are willing to do it. And we've had a good history now of returning coaches. That's the mentality we want. We want someone who is so passionate about it that, I guess they're able to overlook the challenges of being involved in something that's so intense and so time consuming.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? Youth hockey is something else. But, well, hey, we really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to us about building your program there in Long Island. And the last question I have for you, just kind of leave it open. If there's anything you want to add or anything that you think we haven't covered that you think would be good. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are starting girls programs or coaching girls programs that might take something out of this. So maybe one piece of advice for people before we let you go.
Well, I think, as far as building an organization, like I said before, just recognize going into it that there's going to be challenges every season. But there's always a workaround. You have to stay creative. You have to stay motivated as well. It's certainly not a sport and a business that you can just become complacent with how the program is running. And if if you think that everything is perfect and it doesn't need to be improved upon, then the organization, the business, that's going to breed stagnation. And with the sport growing at the rate that it does, and with all the obstacles that come in the way to running any youth program, but particularly a girls' youth program, you really have to you have to stay focused on being a dynamic program and bringing in new ideas and new talent every single season. It's not something that you can just let run, because it may survive a couple of years like that, but then you'll see a decline, and that's really, I believe, what I was faced with when I first came home from BC. Was there had been this attitude of complacency, and the sport was on a decline. And it's ever changing. It's the program should always be evolving, and have that mission statement in place. Have it where it's something that's written down, that the coaches know it, it's on your website, the parents know it, the kids know it, because that's really going to end up at the end of the day, that's your guiding light for where you're going to take things. And it's something that we go back to multiple times a season. Are we still in keeping with the original mission and the philosophy of the program, and how do we work within that, and how do we improve upon that? It's not something that we look to change. We know that it's our foundation. We feel like it's kind of our constitution, and we are open, and every season we're willing to make amendments, but that foundation is really what will guide programs as they develop and grow.
Awesome. I love that. Well, I feel like I'm a couple years behind you in what you're trying to do. So hopefully we can take some of the things that you've learned and all the advice that you have to help us out. And I'm sure it'll help a lot of other people out too. So Alexis, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to us, and best of luck moving forward.
Great. Thank you. Same to you.